Hello everybody, it is Thursday again. That's come round quickly, hasn't it?
Hasn't it just?
We're the infant
Really
feeding
quick.
team at the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford, and this is our questions and answers session for about an hour about breastfeeding, infant feeding, formula feeding and weaning and anything in between. So before you've had your babies, after you've had your babies, and anything that's worrying you at all. So we love you to put your questions below down there, and hopefully we can answer them all. We normally can, so we can reassure you that what you're doing is amazing already. And if you're having some problems, not so much going into details of personal things, but you know, generalized questions as well. And if it's more personal, then we'd say ring, but you know, we can talk about things in general. That's absolutely fine. We're not here to talk about birth and scans and visiting and things like that. So if you've got any questions that you want to know the answers to for visiting and stuff, or when your what scan department hours are, or anything like that, then go to the appropriate departments and ask your midwife, or there is an Ask a Midwife session which is alternate Mondays. That's with our consultant midwife Wendy, and she can hopefully answer the questions that you're not sure about, but so can your midwives. And also you can get access to the OUH website on their page, and they will direct you to the relevant areas, so hopefully you can get the answers that you need. So
Cleaning. We were thinking about cleaning, weren't we? Because someone was told access some other information about cleaning equipment.
Yeah, weren't sure about how to clean their equipment with breast milk and
that
things.
can be quite conflicting because people get told different things. But from our point of view here at the OUH, we had infection control involved in 2011. It's quite a long time ago now, 10 years ago. And they were looking at cleaning pump kits and things like that, and syringes, etc. And it was deemed that it was perfectly suitable to clean pump kits with just hot soapy water and rinse and hot water. And that was from our infection control team here. Because at that point in time we had cold water sterilising, and what we were finding is the equipments weren't washed terribly well, and then they were popped into cold water sterilising, and then they weren't really sterile because they had this fatty layer that nothing got through. So actually, by washing thoroughly with hot soapy water, or even running it through a dishwasher, that was perfectly adequate for mothers who were feeding their own milk. So this is anything that only comes into contact with breast milk. It does not relate to anyone who's feeding with formula milk. And the reason for that is that human milk is a live product and it fights off bacteria. So actually, once a mother's pumped, the milk that she's got pumped, in the first hour or so, the bacteria level will drop, believe it or not. It's incredible, and it's because it's this live product, it's full of the same things we have in our blood, like macrophages and phagocytes and enzymes that fight off bacteria. So you don't have to worry in the same way about your milk as we would if it were a formula milk. So anything that comes into contact with formula milk does need to be sterilised, but anything that only comes into contact with breast milk, so your colostrum, your mature milk, whether it's a syringe or your pump kits or the bottles and teats, that only needs to be washed thoroughly. So we know that that's caused some confusion for people. But if you're a mum out there pumping, and you know, we ask you to pump if you're struggling to get your supply up 8 times in 24 hours, not having to sterilise the equipment makes an enormous difference to the time that you have.
And also, if you're pumping at night, and you know, we say 6 hours, your milk can sit on the side when you've pumped. You can do 2 pumps, so you can you know, the early part of the night you can pump and then go to sleep, leave it on the side with what you've expressed, and then you can add to it you know, for 6 hours. So you can do a couple of pumps in that time and then put it in the fridge when you get up, but as long as it's about 6 hours it should be fine.
Yeah.
So that makes it much more user friendly than having to get up, clean your pump equipment and put it in the fridge and then go back to bed, you know. So you just bung it on the side, go back to sleep, and then pump again a few hours later, and then you can use that and put it all in the fridge at the same time, but within that 6 hour period. So, you know, make it as user friendly as you can, and we see that, you know, and there's no extra benefits from sterilising things.
And the thing to say is that if you're using our pumps here in the hospital, if you're in and you've used our pumps, then actually the pump kits that we use for our Ardo and our Amida pumps, those are the green ones, not the yellow. Those pump kits are reusable, so you actually, if you happen to come in, use a pump with us, take your pump kits home, because you can reuse those ones at home. The ones that we use for our yellow pumps, the Medela pumps at the moment, are for short-term use, so they're not so good in that respect. But the ones that we use for Medela and Ardo, so that's our big green and white one and our big green ones, then those pump kits are reusable. So if you're given those kits and you're using that pump while you're with us, take your kits home.
So the kits.
I think Naomi's about to find those kits.
Yeah, just to see, that's what the kit will look like. It'll look like that one, so it'll be much higher, and it'll all be in one piece. And the Medela ones have got sort of yellow squishy bits on, and little yellow bits of plastic in them where the where you use the little bits here. So this bit that goes inside the funnel, they're all sort of yellow coloured or white. That's the Medela ones, but these ones are reusable. So if you're not sure.
So we'll save plastic, we'll do our bit with sustainability and the environment by reusing the kits. You're going to find a bit of a Medela pump.
There's a bit of a Medela pump, so that's the ones that have got this sort of flange on them, which is like a valve. It's to get the suction. But these are used once.
Yeah.
So have a look and see what you get, but do take them away because they get thrown out.
Yeah, which is always a shame.
Home, which is such a waste of plastic. So take them.
Gosh, quite the
and your bottles.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Here, they get thrown out too.
And the syringes.
And the syringes.
Yeah.
And if you're collecting colostrum with your little syringes like this, you can reuse these. So once you've given it to your baby, just wash them with some soapy water again.
How it comes apart.
So it comes apart. You take it out like that, wash it with soapy water, and then you can put it back together. And they're reusable. So if you haven't got enough, or that you're waiting for somebody to give you syringes because they're busy, and we are really busy at the moment.
There's a real baby boom going on.
We've all been breeding. It's not our fault. We're looking after you.
Lots of babies.
But if you're running out of syringes, or they're too busy to give you them when you ask because they just run off their feet, then you can wash them. So give your baby the colostrum, wash it out, and then do some more expressing. They are reusable. So don't panic if you haven't got any. And if you've used them a few times and you want more, then go and poke somebody and say, can I have some more syringes, rather than waiting for them to come. And then you're not missing opportunities to express and collect colostrum for your baby when you're learning to do all of these things, because we talk endlessly about how many times you have to hand express colostrum, 8 times in 24 hours. Then you don't want to miss that opportunity.
No.
And you can also add to these syringes, because if you're using a small syringe for early harvesting of colostrum in the early days, so in the first 0 to 2 days, you can add to it. So it's okay for 24 hours on the side. So if you're getting 0.1 or 0.2 of a mil out, which is tiny little bit like that, you can keep adding to it for 24 hours. Hopefully it's going into your baby's tummy. That's the best place for it. But if you're filling them up, you can keep adding to them, and then once you've given it to your baby, you can just wash them with soapy water and reuse them again. But if you're reusing, or they're all full, then just go and poke someone and say, can you get me one? And stand there till they do.
And the other thing to say is that if you were on level 5, and many of you, will have your babies on level 5 if you haven't had them yet, is that there is make sure you get some washing up liquid, because we can pop a bit in a tub for you, or you go to, there's a little room outside Bay 12, and it'll make sense to you when you're with us, because it's as you walk onto the ward, we've got side rooms going down one side and then bays going down the other, and they're numbered sort of 10 through to 18.
The desk where the midwives all sit.
And there's a room there which has washing up liquid, all the bottles, syringes, teats, everything to do with the pumps is all there, everything mothers need for that. So there is washing up liquid in there, and I often will send partners up there to go and do the washing up, and then get themselves a bit of washing up liquid to bring back with them.
Good job for a partner to do.
The washing up, absolutely.
Very good job. And that's why you put your milk in the fridge if you're expressing. You put your milk in the fridge there with your time of pumping and details. Don't put too much on it.
I had a look in the fridge the other day. I was just getting some donated breast milk out for a mother, and the fridge was full. It was so lovely to see that our little fridge, which has the express breast milk in, the mothers are doing, and it was chock-a-block full. It was so brilliant. So you know, you can see some names were numerous and some were just one or two, but it was really lovely to see how much was in there. So obviously,
People were
lots
working
of
really hard.
Yeah, lots of amazing expressing going on.
Yeah.
We've had a question from Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. You're the first today, so being very quiet on the questions. She said, "Hello. When does breast milk supply settle? My exclusively breastfed 11-week-old started sleeping through the night. Have done nothing to encourage this. It just happened. I'm extremely grateful for the sleep, but a bit worried that no night feeds will affect my supply. My breasts are pretty solid and tender in the morning. She seems to be gaining weight okay, and weeing, pooing, all fine." Oh, how exciting.
It does damp itself down a little bit, and yeah, very lucky, aren't you?
Yeah.
But not many babies do that, but that's fabulous. So the thing is that you've made your milk in the early days, and your supply is worked by your endocrine system, and it becomes autocrine system after about 4-6 weeks, and so it goes up and down as you need it. So you're not going to switch your supply off unless you stop, and your body and your baby will drive that supply and keep driving that supply. So if your baby stops feeding at night, it will damp down a little bit, but it does take a few days. You can take it off till you're comfy, so you might just find that you hand express into a pot until you're comfy. It might be only 5 mils or something, but it just makes you a bit more comfy while you're trying to damp down that supply. Your breasts have got, or the milk's got something called feedback inhibitor of lactation in it, called FIL, and that sends messages to the body to stop making milk if the breasts are full. So that's why we talk about taking milk off all the time and not going a long time without feeding when you're trying to establish your supply, because if you leave milk in the breast, it gives out this enzyme which stops milk production, and so you dump your supply down. But it works both ways. So if you're trying to damp down your supply because your baby's not feeding so much, it will do that naturally as well. And if you feed before bed and then feed in the morning, you'll be absolutely fine. It's what your baby is driving with the supply, and it is ready for that next phase. And some babies wait a couple of years to do that, and some do it in 6 weeks. But it's lovely for you, good for you to have that rest. And obviously if you're really rested, you'll make even more milk, won't you? And perhaps your baby had a bit of a spurt a few weeks ago where they fed a lot and were awake more at night, and then suddenly they've changed the milk composition, so they're getting the different fats and different things in the milk for the next phase. But if you don't take it off, it will damp down slowly and gently. But if you're very uncomfortable, just take a bit off till you are comfy, not pumping.
And likewise, should your baby change the pattern, because unfortunately babies don't normally stick to these patterns, so you might find your baby wakes up, it changes slightly. You know, if your milk supply has gone down and then your baby starts to wake a little bit more, then because you've already established that milk supply, it will go back up again at the right times as it's needed. So
take a few days, but your baby might, they self-regulate it. So if they're having a spurt and they want to have a bit more milk, they will ask you to make more by feeding more. And so you might find towards 6 months they start to wake up again because they're ready for more food. So they will step up the milk production at that point as well. Or if they're poorly, they will feed more, and then you find that you're really full again. If they've been poorly for a few days, they've had a cold or they've had a tummy bug or something, and you're still feeding, they step it up, and then you end up being really full again, and your supply will damp down again when they stop. So it's absolutely, it's a living form. It's working with you and your baby, personalised.
Got a few more questions coming in now, so thank you very much for that one,
Hope that
Jenny.
answers your questions, Jenny.
Deb has said, I'm 38 weeks and trying to harvest for colostrum. I have one boob that works a complete dream in capitals. However, the other is really sore, sensitive, and I can hardly get anything from it. I've heard that one boob is normally better than the other, but I'm really worried that I'm getting barely anything and it's so sore. So I think I wouldn't worry, to be honest. Perhaps just leave that side and let's hope things are
Don't make yourself too sore, and just do a little bit of stimulation. And it's not, it doesn't decide on your milk production antenatally, so whatever you get out before you have your baby doesn't drive the supply that you get afterwards. So it doesn't mean that you're not going to make milk on that breast. So trust your body, and don't make yourself sore.
and make sure you get help when you have this baby
Yeah.
with positioning and attachment, so that we ensure that you're not sore going forward. But any colostrum that you've got now, you know, from that the breast that is working is a bonus. So I would say leave that side that's sore, leave it alone.
And the colostrum you're getting, is it a normal colour? Is it the same colour as the other breast? Is it all the same? And if it's not, then have a chat with your doctor about it. If it's, you know, it's not essentially anything to worry about, but if it's different colours and your breasts are sore and it's, you know, feels different, then get it checked out. But don't worry about milk production, because it happens after you've delivered your placenta, and that will tell you how much milk you're going to get when you do the expressing and feeding when you've had your baby. It's just you're learning the skill, and that's, you can do that on one side if you need to.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, well done you.
Diana said, hi, I'm 37 weeks today. I'm planning on birthing in the Spires. It's my second baby. I had no major feeding issues with the first. Actually stopped at 3 years and 3.5 some months ago. Wow, well done. Wondering if I should try to harvest some colostrum, or is there no reason for that at this point? Well, as long as you can remember how to hand express,
You've got the skill.
that's all you need, Diana. So no, I think you're obviously in a very confident, you know, competent breastfeeding mother.
I think your milk will come in quite quickly.
Yeah, very
If
normally
it
very
isn't
quickly.
that long since
Yeah.
you've fed, it'll probably be around quite quickly after you've had your baby.
Just remember, and I think we say this every time when we're talking about feeding a subsequent baby, and especially if you've fed a baby for as long as you have, is remembering that you need to be in charge of where this baby is. Because when you have a newborn, it's really different to feeding a bigger baby that just puts themselves on, or a child that put themselves on. So remember, that baby needs to be in close. Naomi's going to demonstrate. That baby needs to be in close.
So what you would be doing is probably feeding a baby like this, you know, when a big baby,
Yeah.
it'd be big like this on you, won't it? And so you have to go right back to basics, right back to basics again, and get your baby right in line. So completely in line, and so knees, hips, elbows, ears, all in a straight line, and they're really tucked into the contours of your body.
A little bit low.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, there. So they're tucked right round your rib cage, and coming from underneath. So you're supporting the back of the neck like you're going to the hairdressers in the hairdresser's sink. That's your hairdresser's sink. Your neck's there. You're not doing this, and your baby is going up onto the breast.
And you're going to push from here.
Yeah. So it's that bit of your hand that you're doing, not doing that, which is what a lot of people do.
It's this.
It's going straight on like that, and you're using the whole of your arm, and your baby can put their bottom on your arm like that, and that supports them. And then you can move your baby anywhere. And it's quite a shock actually when you have a baby to carry around. People find them really heavy, and yet they're tiny. But actually, you've never done it before.
For Diana, it won't be tiny. She won't be.
But
be
except
used
they're
to
not
it.
sitting on your lap, doing holding themselves up. So, you know, a lot of people find it quite hard to manage a baby in the early days, because their arm control isn't as good as it becomes. So you will have jolly good arms if you've had a 3-year-old on your hip or whatever, and breastfeeding. But make sure that you go right back to basics, and don't
absolutely.
just sit on the bed and cross your legs and just bung it on like that, because you will be in tears in a few days if you do that. You've got to go back to basics.
We often find that, you know, second babies, mums, we have to remind them to go back to basics.
Yeah, definitely.
So it does make a really big difference. It'll be interesting actually, Diana, because you mentioned that you've not long stopped feeding this one, and it's quite often the case that the older one is quite keen to have a go as well, just to say. So quite often older babies who may have already stopped feeding, older children may have stopped feeding, often like to have a go. And we have quite a lot of mums who do what we call tandem feeding, where they're feeding an older and a younger child.
And another one, sometimes 3.
But just to remind, you know, remind mums that actually the newborn is the one that gets first dibs, but I'm sure you'll do that anyway. But first dibs for the newborn, and then the other one afterwards if need be. We have had fantastic success when a mother was struggling with mastitis, having had a baby, her second baby, and actually the best thing that we could do was get the older one in to feed, and they did a great job of clearing it. So, you know, they really can be great for driving the supply, but what we want to make sure is the newborn gets it first.
That's their priority.
So,
otherwise they will lose weight.
So how exciting, Diana! There's another baby coming on the way. So we never know. Our office is now on the Spires. We might see you pass by. Anyway, moving on to Jessica. She says her little one was on top-up bottles of expressed milk from her stay in an HDU and weight problems. I've spent a long time getting her to a fully on the breastfed baby, which I'm really proud of, to write. I'd like to be able to give her the odd bottle if I'm out in the evening, e.g. at a wedding, but she now won't accept a bottle.
How old is she?
I don't think I've got an age. Do you have any advice on introducing the occasional bottle? I think just trying. No, I haven't got an age. Do you know it happens so often, Jessica?
It depends how old she is as to whether she needs a bottle or she can have something different. You could use a cup and cup feed. Sometimes they're happier with that than a bottle. There's always this thing that you need to give a baby a bottle, but actually, you don't always have to introduce a bottle. If your baby's not very happy, give it in a different way, and depending on the age of your baby and whether they can sit and hold things, and whether they can cope with the being able to take food in their mouth and not splutter on it.
4.5 months. She's just come back.
4.5 months.
Sorry,
so almost ready to have a little beaker.
Thanks,
or something,
Jessica.
a doily cup or something like that. So that they're not. Then they don't necessarily have to have a bottle, and somebody else can give it. I think we do talk about this quite often, don't we, every week? But get someone else to do it when you're not in the room. Sometimes that works, and see if they're happier to take it from someone else. It is a problem for many mums, and I, as you say, you struggle to breastfeed, struggle to get the attachment, struggle with your sore nipples and things, and then get away from giving bottles, and then you can't give one back. But I think if you keep persevering,
we hear about it so often.
We do, and it is really, really stressful, isn't it? Really stressful. So get someone else to do it, and keep away. I think when it happens, so that they don't see you, because I think certainly at 4.5 months they certainly recognise that you're the milking parlour, and they want food from you, and they smell it on you. So of course they wouldn't want to take a bottle if you've got your breasts in front of them. That's the most obvious.
Trying at times when they're not desperately hungry. So if they're desperately hungry, they're going to go, well, it doesn't work, I don't want it. So try at times just to as an option, not at a time when they really need food. So
let them play with it, so that it's just got a bit of milk in, but they can just play with it when they're happy, and they can explore it in their mouth, and then you may find that they accept it when they need food. I mean, they usually do take it when they're starving and nobody else is around, and they have to have it. They will normally take it eventually, but it is a very stressful day for everyone.
It's very traumatic.
It is.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, hope that works, Jessica. Andrea has said, how do you bring harvested colostrum to the hospital when you think you're in labour?
I'd say don't. Depends how far away you live as well, but I would say keep it at home until you need it, because you don't know how long your labour's going to be, and it might defrost while you're in labour, and then you can't use it after 8 hours, isn't it? Express at 12 hours.
12 hours.
Defrosted colostrum. If you've just expressed it, it's 24 hours.
Yeah.
And but if it's in a cool bag and it defrosts because you're having a longer labour, or you're in and out and what have you, you might have to throw it away, which would be absolutely tragic when you've collected it.
So we do say, if you are going to bring some with you, bring in only a small amount, bring it in a little freezer bag with ice blocks, try and keep it frozen as long as possible. And ideally, you keep it on you, because unfortunately we do have a number of fridges and freezers around the place, but not one specifically just for express breast milk coming in from the community. So we have had cases where it has gone missing, because it depends on where someone's put it. So we tend to say, hang on to it, bring it in something that will keep it frozen. So ice blocks in a freezer bag, but bring as little as possible, so that if it does defrost and you haven't used it, then actually it's not too heartbreaking.
Bring it in later. And do some hand expressing when you're in labour.
Yeah, because then that lasts for 24 hours.
So, and it's good, it might just bring your labour on a bit more and keep your tightenings going. So in early labour particularly, work with it and collect some and just have it on the side in your labour room, and then you've got little bits to give when you've had your baby, and that's great.
Brilliant. Emma has said, carrying on the theme, do you need to harvest colostrum? My first was early, so I didn't have time, but would it be good to plan for baby 2? Only 26 weeks at the moment. No, you don't have to. There's no need. We just suggest that you maybe just revise the skill, the hand expressing skill again, because it is so useful. It is your first aid. You know, we always say that if you go home and your baby's too sleepy to feed, or you've got a baby that's so upset you can't get them to feed, then actually being able to hand express and give your baby food is a really sort of calming thing for you and for them, because you've got a way of feeding your baby. You take the stress out of the situation, and hopefully the baby will then feed. But it's not obligatory. It just having the skill is good. You don't necessarily need to have to collect it. The mothers that we suggest maybe want to collect it, would be a really good idea to collect it, are mothers who have diabetes. So our mothers who have diabetes their babies are going to have their blood sugars checked after they're born, like the mothers are doing their own in all the way through. The babies will have their blood sugars checked after birth, and if that blood sugar drops, then they're going to be asked to breastfeed and give additional milk. And ideally it's maternal colostrum, because that's what's going to bring up those blood sugars the best, much better than donated breast milk. And we really want to avoid giving formula, because giving formula is an indicator towards that baby being predisposed to having diabetes. So we really try to avoid giving formula milk to babies of mothers who have diabetes, because it is an indicator that baby will go on to develop diabetes themselves. There is a link. So we try really hard not to give formula milk to babies who have been born to mothers who have diabetes, which is why we actively encourage them to bring in colostrum, and why we would use donated breast milk in preference to, well, we would use it anyway, but in preference to formula
The
milk.
other thing is, if you have gestational diabetes and you breastfeed, you're much less likely to go on to develop type 2 diabetes when you get older.
Big difference.
It will protect you from developing diabetes as an older person. So it has a benefit for your baby and for you if you protect your supply and have that skill. It's really important.
So that was thinking about who we would be encouraging to bring in express breast milk. And the other ones are people who know that the baby may end up on special care for any particular reason. So they've got something ready to go with the baby. So, you know, if they know their baby's going to have to go to special care, having some colostrum before they've had the baby is a really good idea. Or when we've got mothers who are coming in because they know their baby's going to be, you know, delivered early, and then expressing maybe whilst they're being induced or prior to their C-section, again, another time that would be done. But other than that, it's only great to have the skill. You don't necessarily need to collect it.
It is such an important skill to learn, and it doesn't come naturally to some people. So practicing is really important if you it doesn't come naturally to you. And it gives you the confidence, you know, it's positive feedback when you see the colostrum coming. It's really positive feedback, because you don't always get it straight away, do you?
No.
So as you build up your skills and you get better at it, you start to see the colostrum coming, then you feel actually that you can breastfeed and that you have got that skill to do it, which is reassuring.
Right, so hopefully that helped. So Diana came back about having the second baby. She went, thanks, it will be an adjustment indeed to go back to feeding a tiny baby, with a lovely smiley face.
Yeah.
So yes.
It's lovely.
Jill has said, my 6-day-old newborn is latching perfectly with nipple shields. Are there any disadvantages of using these for longer term use?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. We're not purists here.
No.
And if your baby is feeding well and is gaining weight, then you have nothing to worry about. However, if you don't have a full supply, or you've got low supply and you're building it up, your baby will get less milk through a nipple shield, up to 30% less milk through a nipple shield. And the other thing is that when I don't think we've got one in here, have we? When they are on the nipple shield, they have a very big habit. I'm going to try and just use it on a normal teat, but they have a habit of going on the nipple shield like that. And what you want is a big.
Yeah. You still need the same positioning of
attachment. So they quite often go onto the nipple shield like that, and that then is not a deep latch. So you've got to get them onto the nipple shield the same as they go on the breast, and then you can transfer them from the nipple shield to the breast when they're ready. And they sometimes do spit them out and say, I'm not doing that anymore. But some people feed their babies for a year on a nipple shield, and their babies gain plenty of weight and everything is fine. So, you know, it is up to the baby what they do. It's not up to you, it's up to the baby, because they're the ones that tell you when they're going to do what they're going to do. But you have to get a big deep latch, because it doesn't make their next feed. So if your baby's on the end here, you've got to try and get them onto the breast a bit deeper, because eventually it'll damp down your supply because they're not milking the breast in the right way. Or you might need to pump in order to maintain that supply. So it depends on the reason why you're using it. If your baby was in the neonatal unit and you started feeding a baby with nipple shields in the neonatal unit, and you've gone home and you're still using them, you know, that might be why you're doing it. But make sure that you've got plenty of milk. You may have done some really good pumping if your baby was in the neonatal unit in the early days, and that's driven your supply. But they're not without their problems.
No.
But many women use them and have very successful breastfeeding. Do you have lots of milk in the nipple shield, in the teat of the nipple shield when your baby comes off? And are they really sleepy, or are you having to top up and pump afterwards? And if that's the case, then it's making more work for you. Then it might be worth seeing somebody to support you to take them away. And one of the things you can do is put your baby onto the nipple shield, and then when they start to suckle, you take it off really quickly. And we often say just take it off, put it there, and put your baby straight back onto the breast in the same breath. And they start to suck without realising, and often they will just then go onto the breast and breastfeed. So it's about challenging them as well. But there isn't anything wrong with using a nipple shield if it's working for you, and it's, you know, in your head you're breastfeeding, and that's really important. You know, you're not giving bottles and pumping.
We wouldn't introduce them early though. As a team, we do not bring them in early. The reason for that is, as Naomi's just said, it has an impact on supply. So when you're dealing with colostrum, we really would not be recommending a nipple shield. And the reason for that is that you are not getting enough stimulation at the breast. So
they're not getting anything because it's very sticky and thick, isn't it? So it doesn't come through.
So we really do not encourage them in the early days until the milk comes in. Once the milk's coming in, and as long as the milk supply is continued to be established and pushed, that's fine. We tend, as a team, we tend to use them for babies that we cannot get to attach at the breast without that encouragement of a shield. Maybe they've been used to bottles and haven't attached at the breast, and that can be the most fantastic bridge, and it can get a baby from being fed express breast milk, so there's a mum pumping and feeding, and that's double the work. And that baby then goes to the breast and feeds through a shield and feeds really well, and that's where we're saying we're not purists. But early days, they really can impact on maternal supply. Using a shield in the early days cannot be done. If you have it, that's the only way you're doing it, then you really need to be backing it up with expressing, because your supply will be affected, especially before your milk comes in.
And they get very addicted to them.
Yeah, it's up to them when they come off them. That's the other thing.
And often you come off them because you've gone out and you've left them at home, and there's no other way to feed your baby. That's what they do. But it might be at 8 weeks, it might be at 3 months.
It might be never.
It might be never. You just don't know. But many babies do come off them, but only when they're ready.
We think they really do have a place, but we do try to avoid them in the early days.
You know, it's much better to feed on a nipple shield at the breast than pumping and giving bottles.
Absolutely.
It cuts out such a lot of time, but you have to make sure that supply is driven with them.
And it gives the baby all that closeness and comfort that they need at the breast, which they get whether it's a shield there or not. So there's just so much to it that there really is a place for them. But I would use them with caution. So anyone who hasn't had a baby, don't come in with shields thinking that's what you need. You do not need them in the early days. We only use them in specific circumstances. And if they are used early on, you need to be expressing. You really do. And
you need to ask why you're using them, because what you're doing is putting a sticky plaster over the problem, and if you deal with the problem and get your positioning better, then you don't need to use them. So you know, other than the bridge that Alex has talked about, you know, it is just putting a sticky plaster over the problem, and when you take them away you're going to be sore again because you haven't dealt with your positioning and attachment. And breastfeeding is all about positioning and attachment. So you know, they will do it when they want to, but they do get addicted to them, and you know, the reasoning for using them is various reasons, but if it's because you're sore, you need to deal with that problem and get your attachment better, because straight away, if your attachment is not great, it's going to impact your supply in the early days. So you've got to learn to get the real good stimulation in order to get the stimulation to make the next feed, and if that's not happening, partly because you're sore and partly because they're not quite deeply enough on the breast, that's going to happen with the nipple shield as well, with more impact. So it's really important that you talk to somebody about it if you know, for whatever reason you're using them. But many women do. There's no pressure to come off them.
And Jill says this bit, her baby's attaching beautifully. So it's just that caution about your supply, Jill.
Well done.
Other than that, you know, we really don't.
No rules in breastfeeding. Well, there's a few. But mostly there aren't. You make them.
Anyway, and if you want to talk about it further, Jill, then obviously give us a shout.
Yeah.
Right, Anne has said, hello, my baby is 2 weeks old. She's been breastfeeding well, but in the last few days has begun repeatedly coming off the breast and crying during feeds and seems quite unsettled. Is it possible that she has an allergy or intolerance? I would think that's very unlikely at this stage. It's very early to be getting something like that. It's more likely she's not getting the mouthful she's looking for, isn't it? So
look at good attachment.
Look at your positioning and attachment again. She may have grown in that period of time, you know, from that point of view. So, you know, it's amazing how much they can grow, and making sure you've got your baby on really well. But it's allergies and intolerances are very rare. They're not common. So that's not the first thing we would always think about. We will always look at positioning and attachment first.
So go back to your basics, and you've got to remember that your supply is driven certainly in the first 2 weeks for production, and the supply then settles down after about 2 weeks. So quite often mums manage to breastfeed really well, and then at about 2 weeks the babies start to fuss at the breast, and it might be that it's either flow, there isn't quite enough, if you haven't had your positioning quite enough there, and the body is making what it's been asked to make, and that takes about 2 weeks to work out, 2 to 6 weeks. So it might be that you're not quite making enough, and they're suddenly objecting because the flow's not fast enough, or it could be there's too much flow, and that is when your baby doesn't quite get on the breast far enough. So you've got to line them up and make sure that that nipple goes right to the back of the throat, and when that happens the milk goes down their throat and it doesn't pool in their mouth. So if they haven't got quite enough deep enough latch, the milk will pool in their cheeks and they splutter, and they come off and splutter, and they're not happy, and that's because it's not far enough back in their mouth to go down their throat, so they get mouthfuls of milk and they can't suck, swallow, breathe easily. So it's about lining them up, getting them lined up first. Go back to basics, have a look at what you're doing and see if you haven't sort of adapted your positioning and attachment to when you're tired in the middle of the night and putting them on. Allow them to come under the nipple, so they're coming right underneath and their head is back and they're sniffing the air, and the nipple goes just under the gum ridge at the top and slides across the roof of the mouth and goes right down to the back of the throat. And if they do that, the milk goes down their throat and they can then use their jaw to milk the breast to get the next feed out. There's another picture of it there. So you can see that it just skims the gum ridge in the mouth at the top, and it slides across the top of the roof of the mouth, and the lower jaw is right underneath in the areolar area, underneath the breast down here, and they then get a big mouthful, and it's asymmetrical. It's not, if you look at that picture, they're not in the middle. So
I always do it like that. So they're not going on, they're not going on like that. They're going on like that.
So it's asymmetrical. It's not directly in the middle
Not
like
that.
a bottle. And a lot of people give their baby the nipple like a bottle, or they push it down onto the tongue.
Yeah.
If you push it onto the tongue, then you're going to put the nipple down, and it's not going to go up to the top and the top of the roof of the mouth and down their throat.
So if they go in straight, they do this. You can see. And this is the hard palate, and this is the rasping tongue, and they haven't got much breast in their mouth, so they can't milk the breast anyway. So not only are you sore, they're not doing a good job. They're not getting milk, and they're not driving your supply. They go on like that with the chin hitting down here and upper lip here, taking the nipple to the back of the mouth. They have a lovely big mouthful of breast, and they can milk it really well, and they're not sore because this area can cope with that pressure of the rasping tongue and the hard palate.
Yeah, so just make sure that all of your positioning and attachment is tip top. Revisit it, ask for some help if you're not sure, if it's because this is the time at 2 weeks when your baby starts to get fussy at the breast. If you haven't quite got the order in the right order, as it were, when you've had your baby and suddenly your baby notices, it's often at about 14 days. It's always quite a significant time where the supply just changes slightly, and it's either you've got a little bit too much because you've overstimulated because you've been a shallow latch, or they haven't stimulated and the supply's gone down and they haven't asked you for a full feed every feed, and suddenly the body realises that you don't need to give it that much, and they then make it for what you've asked for. So if the early feeds haven't been great, it might be that the supply's damped down a little bit, but you can build it back up, but you've got to work really hard to do that and really consistent with your attachment. So talk to somebody, get your midwife or your health visitor or the local OBS or La Leche support.
Abingdon Baby Cafes opening again.
Get some help locally so that you can just make sure that your attachment is really good, or just have a look and see what you're doing. Get someone to video you and have a look at where your baby is on your breast.
We are, obviously we have clinics too, but we are booked up. I think where are we booking to at the moment? 2 weeks ahead at the moment, I'm afraid. So just a bit of a distance.
It's a knock on from the wards being really busy. We're really busy in the community as well in our clinics, and I think all of the drop-ins and everything are really full on with lots of mums with lots of needing lots of support. So you have to be patient with everybody, but we can talk to you on the phone. They can do Zoom appointments in OBS. They don't necessarily have to see you face to face. You can get quite a lot of support on a telephone call or on a one-to-one Zoom call. You can actually do quite a lot in that opportunity.
So good luck with that, Anne, because if you've had 2 good weeks, there's no reason why it won't get better again. So it's really good news. And those first 2 weeks are when you established your milk supply, so that's really, really good.
And it's always millimetres in breastfeeding. It's never inches.
Yeah.
It's just tweaking, tiny little subtle movement, and it makes all the difference to a baby. So don't struggle. We can make it better.
Erin has said, sorry, I know you're focusing on feeding, but is there any sign of a second birth partner? I have to say, I haven't heard any talk about second birth partners at the moment, Erin. It would be Wendy. That would be definitely a question for Wendy Randall at her next, Ask Midwife session. So save that one and ask Wendy, because she's going to be the one who knows the most.
Well, your midwife might know.
Yeah,
she may have been involved in it.
On the grapevine, I've not heard any changes at all. I'm not sure there's anything happening at the moment.
We're still practicing, strict lockdown really here, other than one partner in every day. So we're still.
Well, the visiting after birth has improved so much now.
Lovely,
partners are in for the day now,
so
whereas
lovely.
we had such a long time with no visitors at all, and then we had one person for 1 hour once a day, which was really tough too. So we've come on leaps and bounds.
So lovely to see partners back in.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, they're your pair of ears when you've had your baby, because all of you mums that have had a baby, you're in your right brain. You can't take anything in. Everything just goes straight out. It's like fog, isn't it? Brain fog, and that's where you should be, because you're protecting yourself and you're in your baby, your baby area as a mum, just sort of looking at your baby with oxytocin. But the downside of that is you can't take directions or orders or information on board. So they are your ears and your eyes when they're sitting next to you and they're listening to people telling you stuff. So it's just lovely.
So sorry that I can't tell you anything about that anymore. No updates on that one. Chloe has said, is a clicking sound when feeding a sign of a shallow latch? Doesn't happen every feed, but often quite noisy, clicky, especially at the start of the feed. A nearly 3-month-old gains weight well and no nipple pain. That might be a letdown, mightn't it? Might be quite a forceful letdown. If it's going after the first, few minutes or so, might be that your letdown comes down really fast and your baby's really working hard to keep up with it. So maybe that, if you've ever pumped and if your milk comes really quickly, that might be what's happening there. And babies can sometimes struggle a little bit to keep up with the mother's supply.
Right, and if nothing else is wrong, I wouldn't worry about it. If you're having problems, then that's different. But if everything else is fine and your baby's happy and you've got plenty of milk and they're gaining weight and peeing, it's fine.
Yeah, we wouldn't worry about a little bit clicking, especially because it's not consistent as well. So
it's more likely to be lots of milk,
which is a good thing to have. Erin's just come back and said thank you anyway. Thank you, Erin. I'm glad you. I'm sorry we couldn't answer your question. But right, we haven't got any more questions at the moment. So I think we've covered all of those.
What time are we?
We are 15:13, which is quite unheard of, because the last few weeks we've done nearly an hour and a half.
Lots and lots.
So
maybe we can go through the care plan again and just make you aware of what's happening, so that you can be on board with things that are happening for you. So when you have your baby in the hospital, you get given one of these booklets when you've had your baby, and it sits in your end of your bed, and then you take it home so your midwives fill it in. But this is also for you. It's an information pack for you, and many women come into clinics and things to see us and they've never taken it out and had a look at it. So it has got lots of information in it. So these numbers on the front are all your different community areas, But the other thing is that they've got the areas where there's MLUs, midwife-led units, where you can go in and get breastfeeding help as well. Ring them up 24/7. So they are there day and night. And if you live sort of Woodstock north, you can go up to Banbury, or you can ring Banbury, and the number for the Horton is at the bottom here. The Horton midwives is a different number, but the midwife-led unit is at the bottom there, alongside the maternity assessment unit number, so that you can call and get some breastfeeding advice on the telephone. But also, if you're really struggling, or you can't feed your baby at all, you can get in your car and you can go there even at 2 o'clock in the morning if they can see you. So
yeah, just check they can see you, because they
don't
may
just turn up.
No, they
because
may
that's
have.
not great. They may be too busy.
They may have births, because obviously these are birth centres. So if they've got mother's birthing, then they may
and
not.
it might be that you don't
you.
need to go in. You just need some
give them a
advice on the telephone. But so you can go along there. Chippy can also give you advice during the day, and if you're living locally, you can get breastfeeding support there. And then if you're sort of south of the JR, then you would go over to Wallingford. You'd ring them up and ask them, and the telephone number is also on here, and you can get 24-hour support from Wallingford as well. And Wantage is also a midwife-led unit. They are during the day hours only. They can give you advice on the telephone if you live locally too. So there's lots of support that you can get, plus MAU if you're feeling very poorly, you ring them. And also if you're in labour and all of those things, that's obviously where you call, and the numbers are all here. But if you've had your baby, then obviously you don't need that. You won't have got it. The other thing that there is there's a little QR code there, which is about sleeping with your baby.
Well, it actually links to all the leaflets.
It links to all the leaflets.
All the leaflets. It links to all the leaflets at OUH. So you can see the sleeping one there as well, but you can see all the leaflets that are available. So it's a link. Yeah.
So you can see those online if you don't.
I tested it the other day. I thought, just check it does work. It does.
So that's very helpful, that little link there, and I don't know if people are aware of it. I think some of the midwives hadn't kind of cottoned onto it either. So, but if you look at that, you get lots of information there as well, which is in your hand. And then the next thing is there's a little thing when you're in hospital. If you bring a pen in, which is also very useful.
Yes, please put a pen in your bag. Otherwise, we hear people saying that they didn't get food. Well, actually, when you order your food, and by the way, if you are in and you are hungry, there are snack boxes and light bites available at all times of day and night. So if you're in and you're thinking, I haven't had enough food, and to be honest, you're new mums and you've been through labour and you're going to need a bit of food.
Energy.
No, so there is food available 24 hours a day. Just ask for it. Press a buzzer, say, I'm hungry, what can I have? And it might be they've got some sandwiches in the fridge, or they order you a snack box, or they order you what's called a light bite. And those are things like, pasta bakes and cottage pie and baked potatoes. So, so thinking about that. Why did I link that to there? How did I get there?
Because you need to fill in your food.
Yeah, we need to fill in your food. So you bring a pen, please, bring a pen.
Your baby's food.
Yeah.
So this says congratulations on the birth of your baby. So that's not the midwives. That tells you you can write down the feeds if you can't remember when they're fed, what side they've fed on, but also whether they've peed or pooed, and you can tally it up and say, well, actually my baby hasn't pooed for a day. That's not so good. We want 2 poos a day, and we want, if your baby's 1 day old, 1 wee, 2 days 2 wees, 3 days 3 wees, etc. You see where we're going on that one. And by day 5, should be about 6 wees a day, and 2 poos a day from when they're born. They should be pooing, and they should poo every day. So and it changes colour, so you can write down what it is, the colour of it, but also you can look at the sort of numbers here to say whether your baby's had a poor feed, it hasn't made any effort, it's suckling really well, and you can put that down as a number 1, 2, 3, 4 to say how well your baby's doing, so you can remember, because actually you can't remember when your baby last fed, and you can't remember whether it's done a poo, because your days and nights will blend, and the amount of days you've been there will blend, and it just is a bit of a reminder, and that goes all the way down here. So that's a really useful tool as well. How are we doing for questions?
Have we got some more coming through? Yeah.
We can do another part if you want in a moment. If you want to ask some more questions.
Chloe's come back about the baby struggling at the beginning of the feeds and the clicking. She said, oh yes, that sounds like it could be the case. I do think I've probably got lots of milk. No other problems. Very reassuring. Thank you. So glad we could be of service, Chloe. Erin's come back. She was asking about birth partners, and she's come back saying she's 24 weeks now with her first baby and plan to breastfeed exclusively if possible. So many friends have said to buy bottles, steriliser, formula, etc. just in case. What do you recommend? I don't think you need to bother, to be honest. The shops are open long enough that if you needed to get formula in a hurry, you'll find somewhere that will sell it. And the first thing you're going to do if you're struggling is to express. So that's what you will always do first, and you don't need a steriliser, as we said at the beginning of this session. You don't need a steriliser if you're using express breast milk.
Yeah.
If you are expressing before you leave us, you're going to end up with a few bottles and a few teats anyway that you can use, so you wouldn't need to be rushing out and buying any, and you only need to wash them with hot soapy water. And I think go into it with a positive mental attitude.
Yeah.
Go in believing you're going to do it.
Don't set yourself up for failure.
Yeah. Now we know that there are some mothers who will choose to have a tin of formula and it sits at the top of the cupboard and that's where it stays for the whole of the duration of their feeding time as their insurance policy, and if that works for them, that's absolutely fine. But I think just go into it believing you're going to do it. You know, your body is carrying this baby. You're 24 weeks already, you're over halfway, and your body is doing a great job. There is no reason why your body won't feed your baby as well. So, you know, for millennia, women have breastfed their babies, and there's no difference now. Your baby, you should be able to breastfeed your baby.
It is a skill. It's like
Yeah.
a new dance partner. You know, and we talk about it all the time like
Yeah,
that.
we
And
do.
say it's like Strictly. You know, when they first start,
Yeah.
they all left feet and they're falling over each other and they're not able to do any of the steps, and it's really hard. And then by the time they get to the end of the show, they're absolute dab hands at it, and they're not falling over and they're doing beautiful things. So your baby's the same with you. It's your new dance partner, and you're learning to dance together. And you know, you'll have good days and bad days. You'll be tired of some days, and your baby will be tired of some days, and then it all comes together. But it's you know, it is a skill. It is a skill. It's not a natural thing. It is a normal thing to do. Breastfeeding is normal, but it is a skill that you have to learn.
So make the most of any sort of all the online resources. So
Yeah.
we have quite a lot on ours. If you go to our website, we have to find it, go OUH maternity feeding, and you'll find 7 videos, a link to 7 videos that we've done, and we go through positioning and attachments, the importance of skin to skin, hand expressing, so that's you can learn how to hand express, and as we said before, you don't have to collect it at this stage, but as long as you know how to do it, it's really handy. Moving on to a pump if you need to, feeding with bottles and tubes, and the importance of responsiveness and relationship building. So there are a whole series of videos that we've done. We always say it, we're not going to win any Oscars, and I hope it's not too cringe-worthy watching them. We did our best, but we do get the information across, and there's lots of other resources too. Baby-friendly initiatives, that's UNICEF Baby-Friendly Initiative, the Breastfeeding Network,
Links to
Leche
all the support groups.
Yeah, so there's loads and loads out there. And think about, so maybe looking at OBS, because OBS run antenatal sessions. So they might have an antenatal session coming up that would be worth going along to. The more you know before you go into this, the better. So, you know, go into it knowing that positioning attachment is crucial and trying to get it right is crucial, and that establishing a milk supply is driven by milk removal in the first 2 weeks, and you'll be fine. You'll be flying and won't need that steriliser bottles and formula milk. So I wouldn't go and get them at this stage, because you can
Also knowing why we say, you know, giving breast milk to your baby is the first choice, you know,
Yeah.
and understanding why we say it, because I think that is quite important that you hear about that and read about that, because that then makes you understand why we are sitting here in front of you talking about giving your baby breast milk, or you know, how to feed or how to make more milk, so that we protect your baby from in exclusivity, so that they just get breast milk. Although these sessions are obviously about all sorts of feeding, but we, you know, predominantly we talk about protecting your baby and giving exclusive breast milk, and I think that if you understand why we're saying it, and read about the reasons and what your baby gets from having exclusive breast milk, and what your body benefits from, as a mother from exclusively breastfeeding your baby, then you understand more about the principles behind doing it. You're less likely to go to a bottle of formula because you know that these are the things that we that we're saying will support you and your baby's health and your health for life, and it protects you for life. So it's understanding that, and if you understand all of that and then you choose to give formula, that's absolutely fine. It's just
that's an informed decision.
Exactly. But if somebody just says you need to give it and you don't understand why, that's not. So if you've read all of that and that's your choice, it's absolutely fine, and we support every decision in breastfeeding and in feeding your baby anyway. But understanding why we're sitting here and talking about it is really important, because it then gives you information that you can make your choices on, and not anecdotal from your family or from your mother-in-law or from your friends, because they say that's what it is. They may not have read the information and learnt about the things that we talk about. Once you've read that and you understand it, then that's absolutely fine.
So I think the first thing you can do to really help with getting breastfeeding off to a good start, and we talk about this often, is the skin to skin. So go and have a look at the 9 stages. So if you go and look at something like the golden hour after birth, there's what's her name, Kaiser, I can't remember her name. So if you go and look up the golden hour after birth, and you'll see that there's been quite a lot of research into the fact that babies, regardless of where they're born, whether it's here in Oxfordshire, it could be Canada,
Papua New Guinea,
Antarctica, anywhere in the world, a baby goes through 9 stages when it's born that culminate in breastfeeding and then falling asleep. And as long as a baby is left skin to skin in that first hour until hour and a half, the baby goes through these stages, and that feed is a priming feed, and they learn about your breasts and what they've got to deal with and how to feed. And if they do that, it's the most fantastic start. It gives babies the best chance of breastfeeding, and you the best chance of breastfeeding. And
it's an imprint. We know that if babies feed in the first hour and then they don't feed again for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks,
they still know what to do
when they go back to it and they've done it. And so they've got an imprint on what is the norm rather than the teat being their driver. So, we had a baby today that breastfed for the first time for 4 weeks, and it had one feed at birth that wasn't brilliant, but it had that imprint, and it just literally in a few minutes went straight on and breastfed, and it's been having bottles for 4 weeks. So mum had worked really, really hard to keep her milk supply, and she had loads and loads of milk, and that baby just went onto the breast and suckled after 4 weeks of never doing it. So, it's so important, that first hour, that first imprint on stimulating that memory for your baby to then go back and do it again.
Yeah.
Can't underestimate that.
So I hope that's useful for you, Erin. So I would say at this point in time, no, don't worry about it.
We've always got such a long answer, haven't we?
Yeah, sorry. If you want to buy something, maybe get someone to get you a voucher to buy a pump afterwards if you need it, but don't, maybe have as a little voucher ready if somebody wants to buy you things. That might be very useful, because your first aid is going to be expressing if you run into any problems, and initially that's going to be hand expressing because colostrum is such small amounts, and then it might be onto a pump. Now we do have pumps available through the community teams for the mothers who are going home who are pumping, but they are in short supply. But thank goodness for, whether you love them or hate them, Amazon Prime, because actually many mums will get a pump overnight on Amazon Prime, and we'll chat to them about pumps, and you don't have to break the bank. So I would hold on to your money. Don't go off and buy sterilisers and things like that, because hopefully you'll never ever need to use them.
And you can use ice cream tubs and things if you are.
Cold water sterilising.
Cold water sterilising system, and you can just use an ice cream tub or a Tupperware dish, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, so don't rush out and buy it.
Yeah.
Just go and do some reading about feeding instead from good reputable places like we've mentioned. So Amy, we know Amy, she's been in touch with us before. Do you have any advice for weaning off nipple shields? My boy is 8 weeks old and has recently had a tongue-tie division on your recommendation. Said we knew her. And osteopathy to resolve some neck tension, but I'm still not making much progress getting him to latch directly. I've tried in the bath when he's sleepy, halfway through a feed. These are all the things we say.
We talked about a minute ago, didn't we?
Is it, but we've obviously chatted to Amy as well. Is it just a matter of time and practice? I'm afraid it is.
In his terms. always.
Always on your baby's terms, always.
And he'll just do it. Suddenly he'll just spit it out and say, I'm not doing that, but just keep trying. And then reward him. Always reward him and give him the nipple shield back until he's ready to accept it. Try when he's sleepy and it's dark and you're snuggled.
She's
and
got all
comfy,
of that.
You know,
she knows.
in the middle of the
Bath.
night, dream feed, you know.
Just keep trying.
He'll do it, or he might not.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, Amy, you know, as we said earlier, a baby feeding from the breast via a nipple shield is so much better than a baby not feeding from the breast. And I know it's a bit of a faff having those nipple shields, but how amazing that you're feeding your baby. How wonderful.
And I know people get really excited when their baby first starts feeding on nipple shields when they haven't.
Yeah.
And then within about 24 hours, people want to get rid of them.
We get telephone calls, don't we?
Yeah.
You got my baby on the breast with a shield yesterday. How do I do it with that? I'm like, well, it takes a bit more than that.
Yeah, you get really impatient and you get fed up of cleaning them and dripping them in the road as you're walking along, you know, losing them at the bottom of the bed.
Yeah.
We know all of that, so but it's on their terms, not on yours.
I think it goes back to that, defining your own success, Amy, and saying actually you've done an amazing job to have your baby feeding from the breast, because you know we don't use nipple shields lightly. There will have been a reason, so you know, well done you, but hopefully he'll work it out. Jenny's come back, so thank you very much, really helpful. Can I ask another question? I've been told my baby could have a high palate as she makes a lot of noise when feeding. Is there anything I should do differently when attaching baby to breast? We struggled a lot in the first few weeks, but okay now. Sometimes she pushes her face into the breast and squirms around. Could this be related to letdown or high palate?
Well, I think if you're breastfeeding okay and you're not sore and your baby's transferring the milk and doing okay, which I think is, I'm assuming is right,
Sounds a bit
because
like
they're
it,
doing
yeah.
that. It's probably nothing to do with the high palate at all. I mean, a high palate is a variation of normal, and if your baby's got a high palate, the chances are probably one of you, your partner or you, have got a high palate, or somebody in the family's got a high palate. It's just normal. It's like noses and fingers and feet and ears. They're all different. And so don't think of it as an abnormality. It's just a variation of normal, and it's what your baby was born with. So you've obviously learnt to breastfeed with it, and your baby's doing well, but it's more likely that they're just waiting for the letdown, or the letdown's quite strong, or you know the flow's gone down. Does your baby get bottles very often at all? Even, you know, it might be that the flow is slightly different and that's why they're getting cross, or it just might be that he's, you know, being a bit fussy that day. If you're not sure, give us a call and we can talk through what you're experiencing. But I think if everything else is normal and your baby's gaining weight and happy, it doesn't sound like it's the palate that's causing the problem. I don't know if you've got anything else to add on that.
No, not really. No.
I think, you know, see it as a normal thing, a variation of normal, and it's not an abnormality.
No.
It's a variation of normal.
As one of my very good
Well done,
colleagues, Sue Richards, who runs the Abingdon Baby Cafe, she says, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So if things are going well, don't worry about it. So if if all things are going well, even if you're getting a bit of clicking or whatever, if it's going well generally, then fantastic, keep going.
And that's the same if you can see a really stonking tongue tie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't do anything about it if you've got no problems. Don't let someone say, oh, your baby's got a tongue tie, it won't be able to speak in 2 years' time.
We don't know that.
We don't know that. There's not research enough to say that would happen, and you've got no problems now. So don't worry about trying to find somebody to look at it. Just get on with it. It's not a problem. So, you know, it goes back to what Sue says.
Yeah. Erin's come back and said, thanks, that's great. These sessions are brilliant. Thank you so much. So that was Erin about whether she should buy a steriliser or not. So we did our usual.
Keep your money.
We did our usual and gave a really long answer.
From meal.
I was about to say, I don't think you'll go on holiday on the price of a steriliser. They're not that expensive. Yeah,
but when you've bought everything else that you need.
I know.
That you
So
need.
I'd hang on. Amy has come back. Yes, we came to clinic. I knew the name, but I couldn't remember what your baby's called, and you've told us it's Rupert. I do remember that. I'll keep trying. In the meantime, maybe get another backup pair for when they repeatedly fall on the floor mid-feed. I know, it's so annoying. That might be well worth it, Amy. Have a backup.
Put them in every pocket, so if you go out and don't forget, you won't forget them then.
And I think pat on the back. You're feeding, even if there is a shield there. You are feeding, and that is so brilliant. And you know, as we mentioned earlier, that still meets all of Rupert's need for that closeness and comfort. You know, that in close with you. It's just there's so much going on, and you know, all mums that I meet, I'm always going on about every time they've got the baby close and they're chatting to them and they're stroking them. That when you're doing that, you're raising the oxytocin levels in your baby. You know, it's like, you know, in humans, even they've said even if you stroke a dog, you're raising your own oxytocin levels. So by patting and loving your baby, keeping your babies close, oxytocin is high in both you and the baby. And oxytocin is your baby's brain fertilizer. So you are growing your baby's brain. So every time you interact with your baby and you talk to them, sing to them, cuddle them, stroke them, pat them, whatever you're doing, eye contact, oxytocin is flowing in your baby and through their brain and growing all those neurons and making them feel attached and happy and knowing that you love them and that you're going to be there for them in their times of need. So it's a really, really great thing. So even with the Shield, you are doing an amazing job.
Don't underestimate if you're giving a baby formula and bottle feeding.
Absolutely.
You can still do all of those things and grow your baby's brain as well.
All of it. Well, that's why
Absolutely.
I said with patting and loving and cuddling.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be just to feed.
Yeah, all of those things. You know, you don't have to be breastfeeding, but we know that breastfeeding has that extra little bit of closeness where your skin is on your skin, and that helps to remove or produce more oxytocin.
And people talk about, you know, partners sometimes, if mothers are exclusively breastfeeding and not giving any express breast milk or anything, talk about partners maybe feeling left out. But actually that interaction that you have when you're doing a nappy change, for instance, is so special because you're close, your faces are close and you're chatting to them and you're touching them, and that's all really important. Every interaction, regardless of whether it's a feeding interaction or not, is really, really important. They're very lucky babies to be loved so much. So Jenny has come back. Okay, fab, thank you. So that was good. That was Jenny about the high palate. I think we're there. So
hang on time.
We're at 36, not quite as long as last week. I think we did an extra half hour last week. So,
Love your questions.
Yeah, they were lovely. So nice to hear from you, Amy, and I hope things carry on going really well with Rupert. And lovely questions from the rest of you.
We look forward to seeing the ones that are doing antenatal harvesting and hearing your stories and how you're getting on.
And you know, access all this stuff online. There is so much online. I know it's not the same as seeing people in face to face, but you know, actually there are some really, really good resources out there for you to support you.
And you're the key players in your baby's life. You know, don't wait for somebody to tell you to do anything. You're the key players, so you make the decisions. You decide when your baby's fed, you feed it frequently, you wake your baby up, it's your responsibility. And if it's not doing what it should be doing, it's your responsibility to ring up and get some help as well. Nobody will know if you're struggling if you don't tell them. So, you know, we don't visit mums as often as we used to in the old days. So you have a couple of days before somebody comes back. So if it's not going well, you ring them. Ring every day and talk to somebody. You don't necessarily have to see you, but they can reassure you if you're worried. And certainly, you know, if it's not going well, get some help. Let somebody know. Really, really important. And even on the ward, ask for help. Ring the bell and ask for help. It might take a few minutes or more for them to come and help you, but ask for help. Don't just struggle along and say nobody came to help me. Ask for help. You know, because if you don't, they don't know that you need it. If you don't ring, they think that you're getting on okay. It's just, as you know, mad up here at the moment. We've had such a baby boom. So
it's going to be a big school year.
It is.
And lots of them in August. Lots of them in August. Got a really sad message just come through from Charlotte to say she's had a scan and she's had a miscarriage. So really sorry, Charlotte. Really sorry to hear that. Leanne's come and offered support, which is lovely.
So sorry to hear that.
So yeah, go and cuddle that little girl of yours, your lovely Alicia. Go and give her a big cuddle. And yeah, so sorry about that, Charlotte.
That's very brave of you to share that with us all.
Yeah, really brave. So collective hug for you from on that one.
Yeah.
And thank you, Leanne, for coming back straight away. That was really lovely too. Oh, anyway, on that note, so thank you very, very much for all of you. And Charlotte, lots of love to you. And we shall say goodbye till next week.
Yeah, have a good week.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.